Do the words well-regulated in the Second Amendment mean that the government has the right to restrict the firearms the people are allowed to possess? No. Stick around and I'll explain why.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit.
Welcome to the occupation. Hang your collar up inside. Hang your freedom higher.
It's the only way to be sure.
The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution reads, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." It's an oddly worded sentence, and its peculiar construction has led to a great deal of argument and confusion about its meaning. Gun control advocates have long seized upon the phrase well-regulated militia to argue that the amendment means that it refers to members of the National Guard, or that those words confer upon the government the power to restrict or control the weapons citizens are allowed to own. This is sophistry, but to understand why, we need to define some terms. The phrase well-regulated was in common use long before the Bill of Rights was drafted in 1789. It referred to the condition of something being in proper working order. Something that was well-regulated was functioning as it was supposed to function. A clock that keeps accurate time would, for instance, be described as well-regulated. The rise of the modern administrative state, a topic for another video, has given rise to a different meaning of the word regulate, one the founders simply could not have predicted. Merriam-Webster's dictionary still includes essentially the old meaning as a secondary definition, to bring order, method, or uniformity to. But the primary definition of the word as used today is a thoroughly modern conception of the word. To govern or direct according to rule, to bring order under the control of law or constituted authority, to make regulations for or concerning. This is a very long way from the common understanding of the word when the framers were drafting the Second Amendment. Those who adhere to the notion of a living constitution are fine with this. If words change meaning, then the Constitution can just naturally flow along with them and everything's fine. But this renders the Constitution a worthless piece of paper. Its entire purpose is to set down the rules under which our government operates. To do so, it must be fixed. The framers realized that times change, so they included in the text of the Constitution a means to amend it as the citizenry found necessary. But this is the only way in which the Constitution can be changed, because a constitution that melts and reshapes itself without the direct involvement of citizens is not a constitution. It's barely even a set of guidelines. Thus, this entire line of argument is invalid. No, well-regulated as used in the Second Amendment simply means functioning as intended. Obviously, gun grabbers aren't much interested in the words shall not be infringed, so they hand-wave them away by referring to the National Guard. They are perfectly comfortable saying that this government-run entity is entirely free to possess whatever weaponry the government deems wise. This is often referred to as the collective rights model, which is to say that their belief is that the Second Amendment does not guarantee an individual right, but rather one that is held by the citizenry as a whole. To do this requires completely ignoring that the amendment also includes the words the people. But ignoring those two words is deeply disturbing. In every other instance in which the Bill of Rights uses the word the people, it is clearly and unambiguously referring to rights held by individuals. To distort an amendment that does use the words the people into a, quote, collective right is to undermine the entire notion of individual rights. Now, gun grabbers come from all manner of political persuasion, so they're not all collectivist progressives. But defining a right which expressly refers to the people as a collective one is a step onto a particularly dangerous slippery slope. The founders understood that the militia was comprised of the whole population. They had recent and unpleasant experience of the British Crown attempting to take away their inalienable right to bear arms in defense of themselves and their communities, and they were determined to ensure that no future government could attempt to do the same to their descendants. George Mason plainly stated in his address to the Virginia Ratifying Convention in 1788 that the militia consists of the whole people except a few public officers. James Madison said much the same. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people, trained to arms, is the best and most natural defense of a free country. Samuel Adams was as clear as one could possibly be. The Constitution shall never be construed to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. So no, despite the fervid and often inventive sophistry of gun grabbers, there is no legitimate argument that anything in the Second Amendment supports or even allows the government to infringe upon the right of individual citizens to keep and bear arms.